Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me here today. This is the Sheff United Way, and today we're assessing our pre-season. We're looking at how the Blades have got on in their friendlies so far, what the squad's shaping up like, and how we think we're going to look come next Friday and the big kickoff against Preston. So let's get stuck right in because there's a chance that I'm going to go a little bit long with this one. So the Blades played 5 games in their pre-season prep. All of them were away games against several of our Yorkshire rivals. They were ranging from teams in the National League all the way up to teams who were recently relegated from the Championship. Now, we didn't play anybody who is currently at our level or higher, as we have done in previous seasons when we've been on European tours, when we've been to other countries. This one was purely domestic, played against teams from leagues below us to make sure that we're prepared for the season, but also, I imagine, to try and get some confidence into the squad, into the players, into the fans, just into the entire club, because after losing so much last season, we probably wanted to go out there and just get some wins on the board. Now, generally speaking, this season, these games have been disrupted somewhat because we made significant changes to the squad around half-time. The first 3 games, we were just trying to get fitness. We were trying to get minutes into the key players, as well as trying to make sure that the entire squad had the fitness in their legs, that they're able to contribute when the time comes. We were generally playing a first half 11 and then a second half 11. And for the most part, we were giving youth players the opportunity to show whether they're ready to step up, whether they're ready to contribute for our first team. Despite that, in those early games, particularly those first 3 when we were playing against a team from the National League, 2 teams from League 2, we were dominant. We just put in completely dominant performances, both with our first team 11 and with that mix of youth and squad players that were coming out. And that was nice. Like I said before, we've not won a game in so long that it was nice to just get out there and see the team being dominant and winning games of football. When the step up then came and we were playing against opposition who were going to be at the top of League One, who last season, as I've said, were in the Championship, we were obviously taking these a lot more seriously. These were more around prepping our first team squad. We were trying to make sure we were making our subs similar to what we do in competitive fixtures. It was sort of 5 subs. We did make 6 against Rotherham due to injury, but I think we were trying to keep that to be as close to a competitive fixture as possible. Now, against Rotherham, that was another game where there was a decent performance in there. It was very much a deserved 2-1 victory, albeit that the winning goal came very late on. And let's be fair, we have really struggled against Rotherham in recent years. They're a team that we've struggled to break down, even in promotion seasons when they've been really struggling at the bottom. So it's nice for us to just get a victory on the board at the New York. We then came against Huddersfield, and that was the most recent. That was the final game of our pre-season, and we could only manage a 1-1 draw with quite a laboured performance. The first half was really quite poor. It was very reminiscent of what we'd seen last season. It was slow, it was ponderous, the defending was weak, but the second half was a much improved display. We probably by the end did deserve to take the victory, and were unlucky not to do so, with a 2 or 3 good chances in the second half either being denied by sort of last-ditch blocks or by good saves from the Huddersfield keeper. So that's what the games looked like. That's who we played against. That's the results that we were looking to pull together. Now, what did the tactics look like? How did we play? What was our performance? Now, this one is where there's been some differences. We're seeing a change in who Sheffield United are. We've played a different style throughout this pre-season. We have preferred a 4 at the back, 4-2-3-1 system. Now, in theory, what we're trying to do with this system is we're trying to overload down the wing, similar to what we've done with Wilder in the past. When he first revolutionised that sort of attacking centre-back 3-5-2, the reason that we were trying to do this is that Nil and Wilder wanted to create overloads. They wanted us to have 3-on-2s in both wing positions with Duffy joining. So you've got your centre-back, your wing-back, and then one of the attacking 10s being able to join in. We're trying to recreate that now, and you can see it with how the fullbacks are pushing forward. The wingers are attempting, where possible, particularly on the right, to stay wide, and then either O'Hare or Harmer are dropping in to join with them. We're also seeing a lot of interchanging through those positions, particularly in midfield. There's a lot of rotation that happens in-game between Hamer and between O'Hare, where they are trying to disrupt the opposition structure. They want them to follow them, go man for man, to create space in behind. Otherwise, it's just trying something different to see if we can create through there. So it's quite an exciting change to the dynamic of our team as we look towards the new season. Now, let's be honest. we needed a change. We were ready for something different. We've been crying out for it now for quite a while, because whilst the 3-5-2 has been unbelievable, it's been so successful for us, we've reached the point where we've probably got as much out of it as we can. There's been 2 really, really bad seasons in the Premier League playing that system, where clearly it has just been found out and we are being punished for it at the top level. So now we're trying something different. We're trying something to try and get the most out of us. And Wilder is trying to recreate the magic that he's had before in changing the system, bringing this team together and trying to take us back into the Premier League and back into a quite special time that we'd had with the club. Now, this one is slightly less regimented. I expect that we'll see a lot more reliance on the individual brilliance of players like Hamer, like O'Hare, like Harrison Burrows, who's come in. And that could also make us such an exciting team to watch. I just think it's going to be a lot of attacking play. And for the first time in a while, I think we're going to be a lot of fun. Now, we'll get into these individual performances later on in the video, where we're going to do a full squad look at what's happened in pre-season and what does it mean for our starting 11 against Preston. But there have been some key things that I think have come out so far. Now, don't get me wrong, we've had a pretty good pre-season. The results have been there. We're unbeaten. We've won 4. We only drew the 1 game against Huddersfield. And so it's working. It's been positive. There have been lots of things to like about this pre-season, but there are also things that we've got to learn from this pre-season, things we'll want to change or we'll want to work on as we go into the new season. And they're the things that I'm just going to pull out now when we're looking at these tactics and we're looking at the performances. So I mentioned before that we've gone 4 at the back and we're trying to play with wingers. And so that additional width, we really want to try and get that. And we want to try and get that for the overloads, as I mentioned before. But unfortunately, at the moment, we're quite unbalanced with this. We've not got the players to truly take advantage of pulling a system like that. We've been held back, and we've really seen the limitation of what happens when you have players out of position roaming into those spaces. We saw for a lot of the early part of pre-season, Asula out on the left, Brooks out on the right, and it's just really holding you back when those players who you want to drive the width, want to cut inside, want to try and get involved in the play, and it really almost stunts the area in which you've got to put forward your creativity. Now, we've also seen that when O'Hara's come in. So clearly, we like that interchange. And I've mentioned it before as being really exciting, of the interchange between O'Hare and Harmer. But the one thing it does mean is that we've not really got a natural left-footed winger that's going to go down and really stretch the play on the left. And so they're cutting inside. They're trying to use the half spaces. They're trying to get the wing backs, say Burrows, bombing on behind them to try and create those opportunities. But that only works if you've got proper width on the opposite side. You can only cut inside and play through the middle left, shall we say, if you've got proper width on the right with people overlapping and also players who are capable of getting down the wing and creating the brilliance on that side. And we've just not been able to do that at the moment. So we've seen through pre-season a lot of our play being shuttled inside, and then we're quite slow. We've returned to some of that frustration that we've had last season in particular, where everything was safe. It was in front of the defence and we weren't taking those risks properly being able to get in behind. So that's the first thing that I've really picked up on, is that need for greater width and proper wingers able to play those positions and really being able to drive us forward. The other area, which is the biggest change I think that we've got and that we've had for a long time, is how much the back 4 and what that means for us. Now, that really does expose some of our known weaknesses, if we're being honest. I mean, look at our squad. Coming off the back of last season, we were history-making in how bad we were defensively. We conceded more than 100 goals. And let's be honest, competent football teams just don't do that. And so we did need a change. Moving to 4 at the back is the right thing to do, because we need to freshen it up. We need to try something different, and we need to do something to try and get the defenders themselves their confidence back, so that they're not just locked into, oh, we're doing the same things again and it will be just as bad again. So it's really good that we're moving it and trying to create this sort of positivity around the change as well, which I think will be really important. But it's not hugely worked so far. I mean, we've not conceded more than 1 goal across any game in this pre-season, and that's a positive. You know, you work in zeros and ones. Wilder always talked about that during his first time at United, in terms of defending. You work on zeros and ones, and that way if you score a goal, you're going to at least get something from the game. So it's not all just about looking at the numbers for clean sheets, but given the opposition we've played, that we've only played teams coming from divisions below us, the fact that we have only been able to keep one clean sheet and that came against Chesterfield is a little bit of a concern about the fact that even some of these lesser teams are able to get through us, create chances and score goals. Now, the other issue that really seems to have stood out, and the reason that this exacerbates the back four problem, is that there's little cover in front of them. I think Sousa actually has had a decent time, but we will come on to the individuals. But when Sousa, when Harmer, when Arblaster lose the ball in that midfield position when they're trying to drive us forward, we are so exposed in terms of the opposition's teams being able to just run at our back four, and we do not have a back four that excels in one-on-one situations. We've seen moments of fantastic last-ditch defending. I think about Huddersfield, which is the most recent, and Anel made one of the best sort of recovery tackles that you're ever going to see. It really was brilliant, but he shouldn't have been in that situation, and you can't rely on that, particularly as the quality of opposition really steps forward. So we need to find a way to get more protection in that back four, or to get better individual defenders into that back four to make sure that when we are exposed, we can handle it a little bit easier than relying on, and I mean really last-ditch challenges when the other team are just ready to pull the trigger. We really need to make sure that that's not what we're doing, because it's just not sustainable to be doing that week after week. So we've looked at the games and the quick results. We've done a little bit on what does the tactics look like and how have we developed our squad through pre-season. So let's talk about the individuals involved. What is our starting 11 going to look like come Preston on Friday night? What's our first game in the Championship going to be? Now, for this, I think the greatest driver is the lineups that we used against Rotherham and against Huddersfield. They were very clearly as close to our first team as we're going to get, particularly when you factor in the injuries. So I think the team that started against Huddersfield will pretty much be the team unless somebody comes back to fitness, such as 𝗤𝗄𝗎, who may be available for that first game. So looking at the squad, Adam Davies is our number one. He's won the battle of who's currently at the club to be the starting goalkeeper. He's played in both games against Rotherham and Huddersfield, and let's be honest, 𝗏𝗏𝗏 had an absolute shocker against Harrogate, and I think that pretty much sealed his fate, that he'll not ever be Sheffield United's number one, but that we also don't think he's going to play very much football at all for Sheffield United. Davies is number one. He was our number 3 6 months ago. So very clearly, this is a big problem area in the squad. The season is very close and we will be starting behind the curve. We will not have completed our recruitment. We will not have a strong goalkeeper in place, but we will have somebody at least between the sticks, and it is going to be Adam Davies unless something drastic changes between now and Friday. So we've got to back him and hope that we can get the most out of him while we get somebody else in the door and somebody else who's capable of playing that role long-term as our number one. Now, let's move into the defence. As I say, it's looking more like being a back four. So we're looking at a right back, 2 centre-halves and a left back. Pretty standard stuff. So individually, how do those positions look? So Jayden Bogle obviously left us earlier in the summer, and after that we expected Shackleton, who probably won't be the long-term starting right back, but he is definitely the first sort of reserve, and he will be going forwards. And he was the one who we expected to kick on and be starting on the first game of the season if we couldn't get any recruitment through the door. Now, unfortunately, he picked up what could potentially be quite a difficult injury against Rotherham. And so we've seen 𝗵𝗍𝗶𝗏, the player who has stepped in. He played the majority of the game against Rotherham. He played the full game against Huddersfield. And so I do think he's going to be the one who starts against Preston. If we get recruitment in now, it's still quite late towards the start of the season. They'll need to get up to speed. They'll need to be with the squad. They'll need to understand what we're asking of them. So either they come in immediately and get straight stuck in and we think, yes, perfect, we can chuck him in, or it will be 𝗍𝗏 that is playing against Preston. Now, and I mean this with all due respect, because I do like him, I think there is something there and I think he will develop. He's clearly not ready to be a top-end Championship fullback at the moment. The right side has been United's weakest spot, and so if it's true that the move to bring in 𝗁𝗏𝗏 has dropped out and that we are now looking to other options to bring in, it's a real concern that we've got such a limited amount of time between now and the start of the season, and that 𝗍𝗏 is looking like being the player who is going to have the shirt and he's going to have to stand up and be counted in that first game. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he has an absolute stormer, but this is another area where I think United are once again well behind the starting gun and definitely needing somebody to come in to bring us up to the level that we're expecting to be at for the start of this season. And given that we've known where we are, we've known how long we've been relegated, the fact that so far we've gone through 2 positions and it's 2 positions that we know we need to recruit for and haven't, that's a real concern to me because we've had a long time to get some of these deals done. Now, at centre-half, the change of system means that we could argue we've got some depth. We've got 3 centre-backs. And so if we were playing a back 3, you've got 1 player in each position and you're snookered if anything goes wrong, if anyone's out of form, if anybody gets injured. Because we're only playing 2, we've technically got 1 in reserve in Austin Trusty, but it's very clear that Ēnel and Robinson is going to be the partnership that starts the season. Now, I've covered this previously in terms of some of the risks of the players running at them, the individual qualities, what they're good at. Now, clearly, we've got 2 players there who are potentially very good at this level. Ēnel is a brilliant, forward-thinking, foot-on-the-ball defender. With the ball at his feet, he can drive us forward. We've seen what he can do in terms of his running with the ball, but he was very, very suited to a back 3 system. How does that translate into a back 4? Well, in terms of his defensive qualities, he's not bad in the air, but against a properly physically dominant striker, he is going to get bullied. We've seen that happen before. He's very good at tackling. I do really like his tackling ability, but again, if he's diving in, it only takes him to get 1 wrong for it to either be a damaging situation in terms of potential suspensions, in terms of free kicks given away, but also if he times 1 wrong and they get through, there's nobody behind him to back that up. So there's a definite concern for me there in terms of the defensive abilities of Ēnel. And then next to him, obviously, we've got Jack Robinson. Now, I like Jack Robinson. We all do. He was the one player last season who always did everything that he could possibly do to drive United forward. He was committed. He never chucked the towel in. He never gave up. But if we're all being honest with ourselves, we also all know that really Jack Robinson isn't good enough. He's not good enough for Sheffield United to kick on to that next level. And so again, another area where I'm thinking we probably need some further recruitment. Now, again, I think there will be some planned. I think we will be looking to drive that forward. But with only 3 players there, we need recruitment both for squad depth, but also for quality to try and make sure that we aren't making the mistakes we made last year and that a really poor defence in the Premier League doesn't translate into just being a kind of poor one in the Championship. So another area where we really want to keep our eye on it. Now, at left back, I think that's our strongest defensive position. We've got lots of cover and we've done our recruitment nice and early to make sure we've got the players in the door. Now, Sam McCallum has played most of the games when he's been fit. And then we've brought in Harrison Burrows, who was there to play the final game against Huddersfield. Now, he marked his debut against Huddersfield by taking an absolutely gorgeous free kick, which forced a good save from the Huddersfield keeper and which created the goal for Ēnel. There were some concerns in terms of our defensive structure with Burrows. He was pushing forward and we had no defensive cover behind him. So once he got dragged into the play, either chasing the ball or trying to drive us forward, the goal even came from actually he'd gone forward, we lost it, and they were straight in behind him and able to create those chances. So there's definitely some concerns around that defensive cover and how we make sure that when Burrows goes forward, we've got somebody in behind to make sure it's not a mistake. With that in mind, I don't think it's I do think it's controversial. It could be very controversial, but potentially I think we could see McCallum start if he's fit. If Sam McCallum is fit, I think he might be our first choice left back this season, and I think that might mean that we push Burrows further forward. We saw it right at the end of the game against Huddersfield. He actually moved to the right wing, and I think that might be something to keep an eye on because it could be that we see McCallum as our starting left back and Burrows as a player who's going to fill one of these attacking winger positions. So keep an eye on it, but I actually quite like where we're at in terms of our left back cover. Now into midfield, and it looks like we'll be having 2 deeper midfielders and then 3 players in front of them. In terms of the 2 deeper, that's probably going to be Vinny Souza and Blaster, and I am pretty happy with this. I think Souza's had a pretty good, probably under the radar pre-season. There's been a lot of noise about him in terms of attitude, transfers, other things that are going on. But he's actually really like he wanted to be here. He scored a goal. I think it was against Rotherham. And he's just really started to make a difference in terms of how he's performing. And so if he can stay fit and he can stay committed to Sheffield United, I think we could have a real good player there. And he really might have a good season for the Blades. So I quite like what he's doing in that position at the moment. Next to him, I just love Blaster. I think we all do, don't we? We just, yeah, what a guy. And so I think if he can stay, I'm so excited to watch his sort of development that's happening this season. I think he's going to become a huge part of what the next era of Sheffield United looks like. And yeah, I'm just really pleased to see him getting the opportunity to start for us now. He's going to be a key man this season. And I think whenever he's fit, he will probably be one of the linchpins of this side. In front of them, we've already talked about them quite a bit. We've got Harmer and O'Hare, and I think that's such an exciting partnership coming back together from their time at Coventry. And I think it's probably going to be where all of our goals and creativity comes from. The way they interchange positions is going to keep defenses guessing, so we're going to be able to just drag them around a little bit, really create a bit of chaos and a bit of space around them for the other players to really start to cause a little bit of damage. One of the concerns is what I referenced earlier. They do lack width. So when one of them is on the left and one's in the centre, they both get drawn into similar spaces. So we're not going to have that natural left-sided width that maybe we want, but with an attacking fullback, with, say, Burrows behind them, even with McCallum behind them, we can probably still take advantage. So I do think that's a very exciting position to be in. I think those four as a midfield unit, plus one more coming in, would be a really, really strong one for the level. And I'm not sure many teams would have a better midfield set than this one. Now, as I've referenced, I did say one more. Now, we are currently playing Andre Brooks on the right wing. And let's be honest, I really like Andre Brooks. I think he impressed pretty well on a lot of his appearances last season in the Premier League, particularly when he first was breaking into the team. And I think long-term, he's going to be a really key man. He's going to develop himself as a local lad playing for Sheffield United. And I'm really excited to see what his future at the club looks like. But unfortunately, his future isn't now. And at this stage, I just don't think that he's quite ready to be consistently contributing to a team at the top of the Championship. That's not his fault. It's not a knock on him. How many 20-year-olds are capable of doing that straight away? Not very many of them. So it's really important that we recognise that and that we don't just chuck him in the deep end too early, because that can cause more damage than it will cause him sort of good. What's the word? Yeah, good. Let's say good. I think what we want to see is somebody recruited to play in that right wing position, somebody who's got the natural width, who's going to be able to drive us forward, somebody who's going to interchange pretty well, sort of making sure that that lack of width on the left isn't played out on the right to try and stretch the opposition defence and make sure that they've got something to be thinking about so they can't just pack the central areas. I think we'll want them to be able to beat their man, get to the byline and put in a good ball. So I'm excited to see who we might bring into that position. There is an outside chance, as I said, against Huddersfield. Burrows went there, so maybe he'll start there against Preston if McCallum's fit. One potentially to keep an eye on. But for now, I think the shirt is Andre Brooks. And until we get some recruitment through the door, I think he'll be the man who is starting in that position. And yeah, I hope he can kick on. I hope his development really does reflect it. And he does start to contribute consistently at this level. I've just got concerns about that myself at the moment. And then we get to centre forward. And I mean, we are probably going to need some recruitment at centre forward. 𝗂𝗏 had started pre-season pretty well. He'd played in all of the games leading up to Huddersfield, but due to his imminent departure, which, let's be honest, it's the greatest deal in the history of Sheffield United. I mean, if that goes through at the price that's being reported, and I did do a video on this, which you can catch on the channel from a couple of days ago, but if that goes through at the price that's reported, I think that's the greatest deal that we'll ever have done. But unfortunately, seeing him leave leaves us so shallow up front in terms of what we've got in the depth of the squad. 𝗤𝗏𝗄𝗏 has got quite a nasty looking facial injury. So if he's fit, he will start. But if he's not fit, then it's only Ryan Brewster who is left to lead the line for United against Preston. Clearly, this is an area where, if we're honest, we're not ready for the season to start. We need to get another one, maybe another two through the door so that we've got the appropriate cover. If Moore's injured, we need somebody who can interchange with him. So we need another big lad who's capable of using his physicality. We also need a finisher. So Brewster might work well with him, but we need somebody behind Brewster. At the moment, that's Louis Marsh or Ryan One, both coming off the bench, but they're both very young. Neither of them has got any experience playing above League 2 level. And so again, asking them to come in and contribute straight away at the top of the Championship is a huge question. So there's lots of pros and cons that have come out of this pre-season. And looking at the squad, there's clearly still a lot of gaps that we want to fill. We need quite a few signings still to come through the door between now and the end of August when the transfer window closes. And if we're honest, as we look at the squad, we might say we're not quite ready for the new season to start this week. We could maybe do with another couple of weeks to just get those last few signings in and really knit the rest of the squad together. But let's look at this from the positive side. Every signing we've made so far has been a very good player. The caliber of footballer that we're bringing to Sheffield United is really exciting. There's just not been enough of them yet. But let's give it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Let's try and say, I tell you what, let's get the quantity to match the quality that we've got so far. And once we've filled our squad and once we've got ourselves into that position, we could be looking very, very good for the season ahead. Yes, it's frustrating sometimes looking at the squad of where we are now, particularly when you see them and see the lineup and you see the performance against Huddersfield. But I do think we're getting there. And I do think there's a lot to be very, very excited about as we go into this new season. And we really look to attack it to give ourselves the best possible chance of getting back into the Premier League. And so this is it. This is probably the last one I'm going to do before the season starts. And I'm so excited to get myself to Preston on Friday night to see what United are going to offer up and hopefully to get ourselves back on to a positive start, back into positive points would be quite nice. But let's not get too carried away. Thank you so much for bearing with me and going through this one. And I'm really excited to hear what you think. So let me know how you're feeling ahead of the big kickoff at Preston on Friday. Tell me, what do you think the squad looks like at the moment? Where do you see the gaps? Do you think I'm being too harsh? And that actually a lot of these players are ready to step up, to kick on, and to really take it to Preston on Friday? What do you want to see in terms of future recruitment? Where do you think the squad is? What do you think we're going to do on Friday? Are we going to beat Preston? Tell me everything you want to talk about ahead of the new season because I'm excited and I just want to talk about football because I just want to get started because I have missed this. Let's go, Blades. Let's go.